On the seashore, Laura Byrne is busy collecting shells. Her husband Martin, dressed in a formal suit, approached to say goodbye before leaving for work and to remind her that they are expected at a party in the evening. Laura isn't particularly eager to go, but she agrees for her husband's sake. The day flies by, and soon Laura and Martin are going to the party. Martin compliments Laura's dress but immediately asks her to change into something else. At the party, Martin and Laura perform the bare minimum of socializing necessary for propriety and hurry home. Martin's morning begins with a workout. Laura's morning starts with breakfast. Martin's morning must be flawless. Laura's morning must be planned so that everything for Martin is perfectly prepared. But today she made a mistake with the height of the hand towels, which Martin reprimanded her for. Laura carefully lines up the jars on the kitchen shelves and polishes the dishes until they shine. Martin approached his wife to see what she was going to cook for dinner and noticed their new neighbor through the window working on his yacht. The man immediately hurried outside to introduce himself. The new neighbor's name is John Fleischman. He's a neurologist from Boston who works at the Central Hospital. John complimented Martin's house, as well as Laura, whom he had seen through the window several times. In response, Martin praised John's yacht and lamented that Laura doesn't know how to swim, otherwise he would also enjoy yachting. John kindly offered the Byrne couple a ride on his yacht that evening, as there would be a full moon and the weather forecast was perfect for a sea outing. When he returned home, Martin angrily questioned Laura about when the new neighbor had visited their home. After all, there must be a reason John called their house the best. Laura assured him that she didn't know John, but Martin insisted that she must know this man, given that he was young and handsome. The fact that Laura had been watching the neighbor through the window became enough reason for Martin to slap his wife. The vase of flowers that Laura was holding shattered. She began to cry, which made the man even angrier. But soon the sight of his crying wife calmed Martin down. He apologized, asked her to smile and asked whether she intended to resent him and spoil their beautiful dinner. The husband informed Laura that they would be taking a ride on John's yacht that evening, adding that her fear of water should be confronted, not avoided. Martin went to town, and Laura picked up the shards of the broken vase with her shaky hands. While the husband was away, Laura stepped onto the shore and gazed thoughtfully into the distance. The sight of the waves and the gentle breeze helped her regain composure, and a plan began to form in her mind. The girl immediately set about executing it. One by one, she broke the bulbs in the lanterns along the shoreline. This would prevent the evening outing. When Martin returned, the first thing he asked was whether Laura was alone, reminding her of their morning argument. He also handed her a bouquet of red roses. Without looking at the flowers, Laura thanked the husband. He apologized for the morning incident and presented her with a gift, a red dress. He wanted to see her in it immediately. A look of fear appeared on Laura's face. She knew what was coming next and tried her best to hide her revulsion from the husband. Later, Laura asked her husband for permission to go to work full-time as a librarian. However, Martin didn't like the idea, wondering who would look after the house. He recalled an incident from 6 months ago when she had left without explanation for 2 days to attend her mother's funeral. Laura reminded him that he had sufficiently punished her for that after her return. The yacht ride took place after all. But the weather forecast had been wrong, and a storm began. Laura was terrified. The first buoy was behind them. They were almost to the shore. Suddenly the jib came loose. Martin tried to secure it but lost his balance. John rushed to help him. The helm was left unattended and the yacht was swinging in different directions. When the men finally secured the jib, they realized Laura was gone. Together with the rescue team, Martin searched the area. But they found no one. Martin returned home alone. The funeral was brief. Martin stood by his wife's empty grave for the longest time, as the body was never found. It turned out that during the storm, Laura had seized the moment and slipped out of the boat, then hid behind the buoy. That was the night she perished, but another person was saved. Someone who had been afraid of water but had learned to swim. Someone who knew that the moment would come when no one would be watching. Someone who knew that the darkness of the broken lamps would show the way. While Martin searched the shore with the rescuers, Laura safely swam back, returned home, where the prepared bag of belongings awaited her. She changed her appearance as much as possible, flushed her wedding ring down the toilet, erased all traces of her presence and left by bus. A stranger on the bus offered Laura an apple and started a conversation. When asked where she was headed, Laura replied that she was on her way to a nursing home to visit her blind mother. She claimed to be coming from a friend's house, who was recovering from a divorce with a monster husband. The woman realized that Laura was talking about herself. "Welcome to Iowa," proclaimed a huge billboard at the entrance to the state. The sight of it makes Laura feel better. She looked for a house to rent, introducing herself under a different name. Caution wouldn't hurt. Her new life began with cleaning, some minor repairs and buying flowers. Everything Martin once demanded was left behind. There was no longer a need for perfect cleanliness or neatly hung towels. Now she could look out the window at her new neighbor without fear. And there was something to look at. The man was playing around with a garden hose and singing a song from Laura's favorite musical. This greatly amused Laura. At some point the neighbor noticed her gaze, and she quickly hid behind the curtain. Meanwhile, Martin continued scouring the coastline for his wife's body. But it was all in vain. It seemed as if a dark cloud had settled over his life. While washing dishes, Laura noticed the neighbor's apple tree and decided to treat herself to the unripe fruit, but was caught in the act by the neighbor. The man jokingly threatened to call the police, but Laura took it seriously and nervously explained that the apples were just lying on the ground, so she decided to bake an apple pie. The man proposed a deal, an invitation to pie in exchange for keeping quiet about the incident. But Laura dropped the apples to the ground and walked away, saying she doesn't make deals. Soon there was a knock on the door. It was the same neighbor, who had come with a pile of apples. He said it would not be good if the apples rotted since they were perfect for a pie. Laura invited the man into her home. His name was Ben Woodward, and he led a drama club at the local college. When he asked where she was from and what her name was, Laura preferred to remind him that it was late and he should leave. Before leaving, Ben invited her over for dinner, saying he'd be making stew, to which a pie would be a perfect addition. Laura agreed. Martin works as an investment advisor. It's a demanding job that requires concentration, so Martin asked his secretary not to put any calls through. However, a call came in anyway. The woman on the line introduced herself as Vanessa Shelley and said that she knew Laura. She expressed her condolences, mentioning that they were both members of the Young Christian Women's Association. But Martin objected, saying that Vanessa must be talking about someone else because his wife was not part of that association. However, Vanessa insisted there was no mistake, as she went swimming together with Laura 3 times a week. Martin denied it, explaining that Laura didn't know how to swim. Vanessa was also confused and asked one last question, whether Laura practiced gymnastics. Martin answered no to that as well. Vanessa was surprised, as Laura had explained her severe bruises by claiming they were from gymnastics. Martin, shocked, realized the truth and was instantly filled with rage. He drove home and searched through Laura's personal documents but found no clues. He went through all of his wife's belongings and accidentally cut his finger. On his way to the sink, he noticed Laura's wedding ring in the toilet. This confirmed his suspicion that Laura was alive and had simply run away. At 8 o'clock that evening, as agreed, Laura arrived at Ben Woodward's for dinner, bringing the pie she had baked. But it seemed there would be no promised stew, as there was a fire burning right on the serving dish. Ben struck up a casual conversation, asking if Laura was looking for a job. She immediately tensed and asked how Ben knew about that. Ben replied that it was a small town, and everyone knows each other. But Laura didn't want to talk about work, let alone ask for anything. Ben accidentally noticed a bruise from Martin's last gift. Laura quickly hid it under her hair. Ben realized that she had gone through something terrible and asked again what her name was. Laura introduced herself as Sarah Waters. Martin found the nursing home where Laura's mother had once lived. He tried to find people Laura had interacted with. At the nursing home, Martin discovered that Laura hadn't buried her mother 6 months ago but had simply taken her out of here. The manager assumed Laura had taken her mother home. Laura got a job at the library. After the interview, she was met by Ben, who had put in a good word for her. Ben told Laura that he had seen her near the pharmacy the day before and called out to her by name, but she didn't respond. Because of this, he believed that the name Sarah Waters didn't belong to her. Ben confessed that he liked Laura, but he couldn't make sense of his feelings because he didn't even know her real name. He asked her what she was afraid of and said that they needed to be honest with each other, or nothing would work out. Laura replied that nothing would work out anyway. Later, Laura called the Hill Brown nursing home and asked for Chloe Williams. She covered the speaker with her hand so the mother wouldn't hear her and said that she loved her, missed her very much and had so much to tell her. But the mother couldn't hear a word. Martin was trying to find out where Laura had taken her mother. He offered a reward of $10,000 to whoever found out first. At a local festival, Ben saw Laura in the crowd and rushed over to her. He told her about his past. In return, Laura shared a little about why she moved to this small town, to be closer to her mother. Meanwhile, at the Hill Brown nursing home, Laura's blind mother, Chloe Williams, was humming a song and knitting. The blind woman didn't realize that someone else was in the room. It was Martin Byrne. Laura returned home late. A sudden knock at the door frightened her, but it was just Ben. He invited her to go for a walk. Ben took her to his workplace. The stage was dark, but he turned on the starry lights, and swings gently descended from above. Artificial snow slowly began to fall. Laura was delighted by this, as well as by the wide selection of costumes for the plays. She tried on one outfit after another, dancing and laughing with Ben. Later Ben walked her home, and they shared their first kiss, which almost turned into something more. But Laura asked Ben to stop, starting to scream and cry. In the end she asked him to leave. The next morning, Laura came to Ben herself and told him about her past, that she had a husband and that she was afraid that because of that bad experience, she wouldn't be able to rebuild her life. Ben accepted her apology and accepted Laura as she was, with all her fears. Ben helped Laura change her appearance. Disguised as a man, Laura went to the nursing home to visit her mother. The blind woman felt the fake mustache and asked what had happened. Laura explained that she had finally left Martin, found a job and met a good guy. The elderly woman was very worried about the daughter and tried to encourage her. At the same time, Martin was prowling the corridors of the nursing home. He approached the first nurse he saw and spun a tale about how his sister used to work here, taking care of Mrs. Williams. He was sure that the girl would want to visit her former charge, but unfortunately they had lost touch. He asked the nurse to inform him if anyone came to visit the elderly woman. Martin nearly crossed paths with Laura, but a few seconds saved the unsuspecting girl. The nurse called out to Martin and told him that no one had visited Mrs. Williams for 6 months, until a young man showed up just a short while ago. Martin realized that it had been Laura and rushed after her. But it was too late. Laura had slipped away, unaware that Martin had been so close. At home, Laura thanked Ben for his help. She had fully come to trust him. Thanks to him, she finally felt safe. Martin went to see Mrs. Williams and offered to help the woman with her dinner. He introduced himself as a police officer and asked who had visited her the day before. The woman nonchalantly replied that it was her nephew from Wisconsin. Martin smirked. Laura would definitely have been proud of her mother. Martin convinced the elderly woman that he had received a call from the Boston police, warning him that Laura's husband was in the area and intended to harm her. Therefore, as a police officer, he needed to know when Laura would next get in touch with Mrs. Williams. The woman believed him and anxiously said that Laura wouldn't call until Sunday. She tearfully begged him to save her daughter from Martin. At that moment he moved closer to the woman with a pillow in hand, but the nurse who entered the room unwittingly saved Laura's blind mother. Martin tried to find the man he was looking for, knowing where Ben worked. But to Martin's misfortune, there were 5 instructors in the drama club. He discovered this after picking the wrong one. Yet he didn't give up his efforts. That evening, unsuspecting Ben and Laura were enjoying each other's company. Martin watched them from a distance. With every minute of watching his wife with another man, his rage grew stronger, but he did not reveal himself. After the date, Laura briefly went home to tidy up and put away the prizes she had won at the fair. Suddenly she noticed signs of Martin's presence. Panicking, she searched every room, but then calmed down, thinking she must have subconsciously arranged everything according to Martin's obsessive feng shui. Laura felt nervous tension and tried to fight it, so when Ben came by to pick her up, she was very frightened. The couple had a short picnic on the lawn. Martin patiently watched them, waiting for the right moment. When Laura entered the house, she decided to turn on some music. Suddenly Martin's favorite melody started playing, and Laura was reminded of his stalking, but she forced herself to dismiss the thought. However, strange things continued happening in the house. The bathtub was overflowing, the towels were hanging perfectly straight, and the toaster caught fire. The final straw was when she found the jars in the kitchen cupboard arranged in a perfect line. Laura realized Martin was nearby and tried to escape, but he approached her from behind and pointed a gun at her. Ben knocked on the door, and Martin forced Laura to send him away. After she closed the door, Martin, waving the gun, approached her. But Ben had already sensed something was wrong and broke down the door, attacking Martin. A fight ensued, during which Martin knocked Ben out with the butt of the gun. Martin then pulled Laura close and reminded her of their honeymoon, the night he taught her to dance. Laura had once called those days the happiest of her life. Martin showed her the wedding ring she had tried to get rid of. He would never let her go. But Laura managed to strike him, causing him to drop the gun in surprise. She grabbed the gun and fired but missed. Martin continued to approach, and Laura kept him in her sights, but he was not intimidated. Martin was sure that Laura was not capable of such a thing. Laura called the police and reported that she had taken the life of a thief. Laura's next shot hit the target, as did the several that followed. Martin fell. Exhausted, Laura fell with him. Suddenly Martin grabbed the gun and pulled the trigger, but there were no more bullets. Laura brought Ben back to consciousness. He was unharmed, and now she was finally free.